Welcome to the Bends Collective, a university project which spanned a 10-week period in early 2011. This project focused on the art of circuit bending, which involves hacking into and modifying the circuits of various sound devices so that they behave in new and unique ways. These modifications can be made to children's toys, musical instruments, games consoles, and pretty much anything with a circuit. Having no prior experience in this area, the three group members learned these skills over a short time period, and we began hacking anything we could find. Starting off with just a few simple instruments, we developed our knowledge, as well as our soldering skills, to create a vast and varied army of circuit bent instruments. Using these hybrid sound machines, we wrote and performed a piece of original electronic music in front of a live audience. In this documentary, we will walk you through our process. But first of all, we have to show you how to hack. The general idea of hacking is to create short circuits so the audio is routed through the circuit in a different way. This can easily destroy a device, so it's best to use cheap kids' toys which you can find in your attic or pick up from a charity shop. First, you open up the toy. We were never sure what we were getting ourselves in for when opening up our instruments. Each one is totally different, but that's the beauty of circuit bending. Also, no knowledge of electronics is required. It's all pretty experimental. Once the toy is opened up, you start probing the circuit by using crocodile clips to connect random points on the circuit together. You can be as methodical or as reckless as you like when doing this. Make sure the device is playing audio when you're probing, so that you know if what you are doing is altering the output. In this example, we found a super speed hack. The playback speed is so fast that the audio turns into a high-pitched glitch. This is a great sound to use. If you don't want your hack to always be active, a switch, or potentiometer as we've used here, is soldered across the two bend points, so that it can be controlled. Using a pot, we can vary the playback speed of this toy. Once you're happy with your hack, you need to mount it on your instrument, and this can be a lot of fun. The usual practice is to drill a hole large enough for the component to fit through and be bolted in place. But we encourage you to be as creative as you can. With your component in place, put the toy back together, and there you have it, your first circuit bent instrument. We added output jacks to all our instruments, so their sound can be played through amps and loudspeakers. Doing this often reveals surprisingly high quality results from even the cheapest of instruments. We used this same method of hacking on all of the toys and instruments we created. We discovered things like crazy distortions, glitching loops, feedback loops, pitch bends, and many more wild irregularities. Often the toys took on a life of their own, changing and adapting over time. There was no guarantee that the toys would sound the same from one day to the next, and in fact they never did. This caused problems at the composition stage, but we grew to love the random nature of our instruments. With an audio army at hand, we set about adding a visual element to the performance, and this is where we turned to the Nintendo. The Nintendo was circuit bent in similar fashion to the audio toys and instruments, but this console was also fitted with an Arduino board and electronically operated switches, so that hacks did not have to be activated by hand. To circuit bend the Nintendo, it was opened up and taken apart until the core circuit board was exposed. From here, the circuit was probed for bends. All of the bends came from the numerous graphics chips, and there were hundreds to choose from. Chosen bends had wires soldered to them so that they could be fed out of the console and attached to switches. The device was then reassembled to its original form. Hacks on the system caused varying changes to the video output, but the game is still playable, and in fact the controller for the Nintendo was given to the audience so that they could play Super Mario Bros. As we performed. The switches were controlled by the Arduino board, and the Arduino was controlled by a max patch. Switches could be turned on and off using a MIDI foot switch, or by playing one of the hacked instruments whose audio signal was routed into the max patch. Peaks in the audio signal triggered different glitches, and so the output appeared to glitch in sync with the music. The Nintendo was a successful addition to the project and contributed to an immersive performance experience. Another element which added to this experience was a max patch which quadrophonically panned the audio around the audience. This patch was also used to control the overall mix of the performance. With all the instruments in place, we set about writing the music. Practice sessions were initially very improvisational. We were still learning our instruments and the sound textures they were capable of. Through regular rehearsal, we learned how to play off one another, so that there wasn't always just a constant wall of noise, and we could begin scoring different sections of the music. As time progressed, we focused on refining separate sections of the piece, before figuring out how to link from one to the other. A lot of time was spent improving the overall shape of the piece, particularly in transition sections, so that they carried as much of an impact as possible. It was challenging learning to compose with such strange sounds, yet a process which we grew to love. Once the piece was fully written, we could focus on rehearsing it over and over while thinking about how to set up for our performance. With all of the instruments built and all the music written, we were ready to perform. We set up our performance space using one large table for the army of instruments and projected the Nintendo output on a large screen behind us. This performance was the culmination of hard work, creative exertion, and severely diminished sleep patterns over a 10-week period. It was a highly rewarding experience, and one we would suggest to anyone who is interested in finding a new purpose for the hundreds of discarded toys, instruments, and objects that surround us in everyday life.